I know there's a whole lot more of that, but is my sense of understanding, or at least my way of understanding it, in the right direction at all?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to scale it back, and I'm pretty sure people have heard it a bunch of times, but the beacon chain has been running for like a little bit over a year in parallel of what's been happening right now. So we went from proof of work with a whole bunch of miners to now proof of stake with all these validators, right? And so we've been running in parallel for the past year, testing it, making sure everything's going. You ran it on the test nets. For Gurley, I was thinking what the other test net was. So that run, smooth and basically simulating what would happen once we do the switch, right? So everything's kind of been prepared. Think of it like when you first started driving, and like you're driving in some third world country, and like you're having driving lessons, and now you got to change lanes, but nobody's letting you change lanes. So it's kind of like that scary moment of like we got to switch over, but once you switch over and you kind of like balance out, you should be okay. And so yeah, it's ultimately like, okay, we're switching from this type of way that we validate to another way. And we've been testing it for. I'm saying we, like I'm like me and Vitalik are in the same room and shit. But in general, like the organization has been testing it for like a year. For any possible, any possible issue that might go wrong, so they can settle it, and figure it out and adjust and everything. For those that are a little bit more technical, what we don't want is to have reorganizations of blocks. So let's say like you kind of go backwards in time sometimes. Like I pay you $10 on transaction two, and then on transaction three there's a reorg, and so then we roll back to two, so that transaction never happened, even though I have a proof that I paid you. So those are the kind of things that we were worried about that would happen during the merge or the adjustments, all these little tiny things. And like the phenomenal thing is like it literally went seamless. It was like insane. Like this was like in the scope of like getting a whole bunch of people all over the world to work in unison, which is like a crazy accomplishment, especially when there's like no crazy financial incentive in a sense to do so on anybody's. It was more for the purpose of doing this migration, which was
And
pretty dope.
and Billy, who was the entity behind organizing such a merge, such a technical thing from all over the world, all that? Was it only yeah, like who managed that time, who managed the resources, who managed all that?
That was me and Vitalik for sure, and then some other people. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Late nights.
Yeah, no, it's literally the Ethereum Foundation that handles most of that scenario. But in reality, in the craziest amount of like how you think of the scope is, you're talking about 20 guys in essence that pretty much run this whole network, that lead this whole space, that
That's
are
not a
like,
lot. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. You mean like when you look at these pictures of like the Ethereum founders and like all these original pictures, some have left, some have come, but pretty much that is the size of like the core team, right? So they're the ones that you kind of handle all the ins and outs of it. We're talking like giga brain level of knowledge. Like if you ever want to feel stupid, go to Ethereum Foundation technical discussion meeting, and you will not understand a single word of what they say. I'm like, what? So it is their foundation that they were able to coordinate between all these other like organizations and groups that handle, like you're talking validators, you're talking the GoEth coordinations, like there's all these other subdivisions that make it work, but it all goes behind the Ethereum Foundation that makes this whole thing go. And it's a very, very small group, and that's where not to get too far out of topic, but like their whole ethos of everything is decentralization. They don't want the power; they want to spread it out anywhere. So they're trying to get more people involved and more people to have their own path of it. So like when we're having issues with Lighthouse and GoEth and all these other ones, like if there's too many validators in one location, it's like, all right, we're having too many people join this. Let's spread it out a little bit. Even today, there's a big issue of like Coinbase and Lido financing basically having 50% of most of the validations. So we are looking for ways to get people to stake their ETH in other locations as well. But we'll get into that in just a little bit. I don't know if there was any more questions or anything like
well,
that.
I was gonna kind of clarify something. So there were this kind of fogginess of the merge was only like public hype, I would call it, right? Because these 20 individuals and other entities that knew what was going on, they really didn't have a quote unquote doubts, right? They were sound like it sounds to me, based on what you said and based on what I've read, that there was no type of like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. They knew they've been testing this, they knew what was going to happen, it was more of a public reaction, I guess, that this whole merge thing.
I guess so. Like I would put it like an MMA fight, right? Like or you like this guy's been winning the whole time, and then on the fifth round and on the 4 minutes and 50 seconds, he gets knocked out. Because there's always that chance. So even if even if it looks good and the test nets run good, you kind of holding your breath and tighten your ass like, once this merge happens and this block happens, will it work? You can go through all the scenarios, but when you go live, it's hard to tell, especially because they were getting a lot of fight from the miners, right? Because you look at it this way, miners were making a shit ton of money. We're talking, oh gosh, what, 14,000 ETH distributed every day. So many, I think 2 ETH per block, right? And so many blocks a day. So all that was going to the miners. And so that's being taken away, right? So like the distribution of ETH is like extremely like below. I think it's like, don't quote me on this. I'm like tired of it, but like it's like less than like 20 ETH a day, right? Versus 14,000, right? So the deflationary system is now somewhat in place to lower that sell pressure. So there's a lot of things to think about in that factor. So you're basically taking someone's like passive income away in the millions, right? And so obviously they're going to fight back. So that's why we got this whole ETH POW, and now we have this fair ETH fork. So we have all these crazy forks happening right now behind the scenes. My suggestion would be don't even mess with them because it's totally like a shit show right now of like people deploying it and it's still showing up as chain ID one, and it's chaos right now. But the point was like people didn't want to lose that passive income, so like they were trying to fight it, and they were going to do other things that they like to do to like kind of mess us up as well too. There's always that risk of like, oh, we messed up, we have to roll back to proof of work, right? So there's always these if ands or buts across every situation, but overall it worked well, and a lot of the proof of work miners actually went to Ethereum Classic, and so now they're like hashing that like crazy too. So it's a interesting situation to see how everything's playing out in the first 24 hours of who's going where, how well this ETH PAL is going to play out, and like who's doing extra shady stuff. So it's kind of like watching drama happen like live as well.
And who are the biggest characters in this, other than you mentioned Ethereum Classic, the miners? Who else would you say is part of this?
Oh, all the miner pools. I mean, again, like there's new forms of extraction as of late. Like when you think of like MEV attacks and stuff, it's miner extraction value. So like all these miners, like F2 pool and all this, it's like pretty centralized of who is like getting the hash power. So like there was only like I would say a solid 7 pools that kind of run the show in a sense. They're all over the world, but I mean, if I was a lone miner and I have a stack of 5 video cards that I want to mine ETH with, I would have very little chance of doing it on my own. And so then I would just go to a pool and share some of my hashing power. And so I'd have to choose, am I choosing F2 pool? Or am I choosing this other miner group? So it kind of got centralized in a sense, and where you have to go with like one of the bigger guys, otherwise you won't survive in the space. You could take your chances, but you can go 2-3 months and not get a reward, so you've wasted all that electricity, you've wasted all that time to get nothing, versus going in a pool, sharing your hash power, and then when you do get rewards, you just get the split evenly. So I mean, it's like you bought all this equipment, you invested all this money, especially if you bought it all in 2020, you might have made your money back, you might have been a loss. So there was always this talk since like as far as I can remember 2018 about moving this over, but we just never knew when. And then the difficulty bomb got moved back because it got delayed. So it was kind of like, is it going to happen? Is it never going to happen? I'm just going to keep mining and keep grinding. So people got kind of comfortable with it too. So, but it was mostly the miners that were trying to do this, and they wanted to keep it alive. So I think ETH POW was kind of like an OPSEC to trick miners into mining it to the last drop versus just turning off their machines, and then it would take like another 2 weeks. I mean, I'm being dramatic about it, but like the block speeds matter depending on the difficulty, depending on how many miners. That way they couldn't give you an exact time of when it was going to happen, just an estimation. So as miners started dropping off last night, the delay, it delayed the merge a little bit longer because of it. So I don't know if it was people like tricking people, hey, mine it to the very end because you might get this airdrop on this other chain. So who knows? Who knows what happens back there? But I have my suspicions.
And since it's mostly all software, right? I mean, of course, there's hardware, but mostly software, I would imagine. Um, will this happen again when another type of code merge or another type of change causes again in the future?
Not as harsh as this one, but there is going to be another fork, a software fork. So for those that have staked their Ethereum, right? Like if you're listening here and you're staked on Coinbase or something and expecting to be able to withdraw your ETH, I have bad news for you because it's not going to happen until they do the latest fork. I forget the name of the new fork, but it's going to probably happen a year from now. So like if you staked your ETH right now, it's not going to be available for you to withdraw it until they come out with that new fork. So you're looking at about another year on there. And I see Tad has got a question for me, so we can let him go.
No, I just remember that it feels like como que estamos jugando La Casa de Papel because that one is going to be called Shanghai.
Nice.
Oh, got it. Yeah, Shanghai. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, we're waiting for the Shanghai fork, which is going to be about another year. So it's anybody that has their ETH locked up that was expecting to like pull it out. Yeah, good luck. So what happens now, right? So I mean, I have a little bit of ETH stake too, and for those that don't have 32 ETH available, I don't recommend Coinbase. One, because it is easy. So like if it was my uncle or grandma, for sure, like hey, just click stake and earn a little bit of passive if you're just going to sit on it for the year, understanding that it's for a year. But if you got a couple ETH and you don't want to get stuck on that, I would say Lido is probably the second easiest one that you could probably just deposit. You can do as little as zero point 0.1 ETH. Or Rocket Pool. Rocket Pool is a really, really nice one as well. If you're willing to do your own validation as well, and you have 16 ETH, you can kind of split it with a couple other people and take some percentage off the top of theirs. So there's definitely going to be new staking systems that is going to incentivize more people to get involved. And I think that's what's really cool. Like that's the thing that really stands out for me with the proof of work and proof of stake is more people can get involved all over the world with different systems. So I think that one was like a really eye-opening for me, because for me to get a video card, like at any retailer was like near impossible just for gaming, and I understand why gamers hate crypto, because I wanted to buy a video card and I couldn't. And if I wanted to buy one, I had to pay like an absorbent price to buy it because all the miners were buying them all up. So now, now they're cheap. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, so if you're into validation and you're willing to play a part, not only are you helping the decentralization of the space, but then you're getting a little bit back too. If your ETH is just sitting there, you can definitely do something with it. But again, go ahead.
Can we put some numbers into it just as an example, right? So you're saying you need at least 6 ETH, was that right?
For Rocket Pool. So in order to hold your own validator, like if you're going to run your own link, I'll use DAppNode as an example. I think DAppNode is probably one of the easiest validators out there. So you need to stake 32 ETH in a wallet in that DAppNode, right, to run a validator. And they're estimating that with that 32 ETH and you become your validations, when you get randomly chosen, you'll get about 7 to 8% back return in pure ETH.
So you'll get about 3 to 4 ETH.
32.
10%,
let's say 10%,
right?
like say 10% lower. Yeah, about per year, roughly.
At 3 ETH per year.
Yeah.
So that's about $6,000 when you've invested, at least right now. Anyways, okay.
Yeah. So again, not everybody has that kind of money, because what is it, like $60,000 roughly in order to do that, right? So if you weren't early and you're just starting in the game, maybe you got lucky and a couple NFT flips and you have 16 ETH, right? So Rocket Pool will allow you to create a validator as well and let others donate their ETH into your validator to fill up the 32. And then while you're in charge of that validator, while you're getting your full 7-8%, you're also getting a couple percentage off theirs. So they're getting maybe 5%, 4% on there, and you get a cut off that. So you're getting incentivized to host your own validator, and then you're staking half of the validation on there running for the slash. So I thought that was a really cool idea to help more and more people that don't have the 32 ETH to at least start getting involved. And the more validators that are out there, the more decentralized it is, the more it functions, and the more we kind of get away from Amazon as a host for most of these services. And the reason why a lot of people use Amazon is because, you know, Amazon has a 99 point, you know, whatever percent uptime, right? Because, and this is the scary part, and I know they're trying to figure this out, is if you don't validate correctly, or if you go down and your validator is chosen and you don't validate, well, then you get slashed, right? So this actually happened on the first block of the merge, which is kind of shady for some whoever's out there that was using one of these services. Their validator was chosen, and they had 32 ETH on there. They got slashed almost a full ETH, and then they were basically told to turn off their validator, and they can't get their 31 ETH back for about another year until the Shanghai fork. So,
Ouch.
yeah, a big ouch. So, you know, you have to be pretty on top of it, on like making sure your validator is up and running. And there's a bit, you know, there's a bit of a scary part, like what if your internet goes out, and things like that. So they're figuring out a fair system, but right now it is, you know, if you get randomly chosen after, you know, millions of validators that are out there, you know, you run that risk, you know. So a lot of people want to pass on that risk or put it onto somebody else, like an AWS center. But if Amazon goes down, then all those validators go down, in a sense. But it is a start to allow the person doesn't want to get too deep into this, to just deposit some ETH and get a little bit of return versus just sitting in your wallet, which is kind of cool. And you're also helping towards the cause.
Right. And the risk, I mean, I was going to ask about the risk, but I think you just mentioned a couple of those risks, right? Which is getting slashed, or getting asked to stop being a validator and not having your funds for over a year.
Yeah, yeah. And that's just because of the Shanghai fork and, you know, everybody expecting. So it's just one of those things that is going to pass over time. And once we do the Shanghai fork, then we're going to start, you know, working on, I believe it's the Surge or the Per. I forget which one on the list on there, but basically optimization. Because one thing I kept hearing a lot, and I was like, who's listening to these people? Is that it was going to improve gas, right? And gas is obviously, you can tell, has not been improved because it works on a auction system, right? Whoever's willing to pay more gets to cut in front of the line. You know, if we're at Magic Mountain and I have the VIP pass and I'm willing to pay more, I'm going to cut in front, and anybody else that has one's going to cut in front of you. So like your transaction is just going to sit there until finally nobody else is in front of you or willing to pay more than you, and then your transaction goes. So we haven't gotten to that optimization of sharding or any of that other stuff yet. It is still going to be the same. One cool thing though is that some people did the numbers, and if we're hitting about over 18 way, then Ethereum is deflationary, which is super cool, because you got to think this way. So now we, instead of shooting out 14,000 ETH every day, that was constantly being pressured, you know, to sell with the miners to pay for, you know, power and warehouse and maintenance. Now it's shifting over to the validators, and we're only doing so much ETH a day. So now we're not pushing out that much ETH. And so now there's less sell pressure. So over the time, like I would assume that, you know, now that we're burning more ETH than we're issuing, we're now deflationary. So that should basically increase the value of the overall ETH if we keep this way up. You know, so if we right now in the last 2 days we've burned 100 and something ETH. So now we're like in the negative in a sense than we were yesterday. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, very interesting. So again, there will always be some type of forks, right? I mean, you just described like the next two, and and as I said earlier, in software or any software, you're always going to have the need to update that. So we should always. This is part of the system, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we could fork one today, Ozzy. If we have enough people that are willing to validate us, we can fork all day. It's just basically what the overall vision of the Ethereum Foundation was, to be able to, you know, do cheap transactions on a sharding and, you know, POS and everything on like on that scope of ideology is what was the vision. But you couldn't do it all at once, right? A lot of people that are trying to do this all at once are failing. You see networks shut down, or you see, you know, not enough validations on some occasions, 51% attacks. So they're doing it slow and steady, making sure things go smooth. I mean, these guys aren't like thinking of an idea. They're not in a room smoking weed, say, hey, why don't we do this? And then they do it. Like it doesn't work that way. They do everything well thought out, and they have, you know, open public people that are very passionate about this space and very passionate about decentralization. And so they have arguments online, and that's why we have literally so many forks on Bitcoin, so many forks on different platforms and different ideas of why it's so, because they believe that's the way it should be done. And then consensus, the majority vote, basically says, no, this is the way we do it, and that's how we do it. So it's kind of like we're getting there piece by piece, but forks can happen at any time. I mean, right now we're dealing with 2 ETH POW forks as we go right now, and I haven't checked on how they're doing, but it's not really my prerogative.
And just to compare, how different is Bitcoin from all this, right? Does Bitcoin have forks? Does it have a foundation that's kind of same as Ethereum? What's the difference? I would ask.
Well, Bitcoin is in the simplicity is the most beautiful part of it, but there are a ton of forks, and if you look into the history of Bitcoin, you can see the amount of drama on there. It's like a Spanish TV drama of like how many people get all emotional and egos in this mix. But you have like Bitcoin ABC, Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision, Bitcoin Cash. Gosh, I mean, like I can't even think of all the other ones that existed beforehand, but all these forks. Even Dogecoin was a fork of Bitcoin, but it was supposed to be comedy, and somehow it got value. So like all these originals, you have Litecoin, but that have the Litecoin Foundation. You have the Bitcoin Core people that created Taproot not too long ago. So and then you have the guys that run the Lightning Network. That's kind of like a layer 2 type of system on Bitcoin. So there's a lot of things happening in the space, a lot of innovations of people that they think this is how it should be. But the number one answer is nobody's right. This is all still a crazy experiment, and we're just in it for the ride right now. Go for it, Tadit.
No, Billy, actually, really, really interesting topic. And I think right now that you're talking about all the forks and everything, I do have a question regarding like ETH POW or ETH P or ETH W. I don't know. There's like 5 or 6 supposed forks, but they have been having like 24-hour spaces. The thing that I find really interesting, there's a lot of people that go and talk and tell them up to their face, like, you guys are doing a rug and shit like that. And these guys are like, no, but they have no, some of them make no fucking sense. Sorry for my language. But what would you advise anybody that's looking into any of these projects? Because I believe people have to be really careful, right? I think I don't know if they're going to be able to get the hash rate or not, but how risky is it like to go in it, or is it better to wait, or what would you recommend right now?
Well, first off, I want to say this is a pro profanity space, so you're good to go. But as for the forks, the ETH POW and the ETH Fair, those are the 2 forks that I know about right now. They're not getting consensus, and personally, I haven't even touched it or do anything because it's a very dangerous situation, right? So the way we organize Ethereum is chain ID 1, right? So if you use Polygon, I think it's like chain ID 80,000 or something, or some kind of obscure number. If you use Avalanche as chain ID this, and any other side chain, they have a unique chain ID that identifies what they are, right? So ETH POW is supposed to have a chain of like 103. But what I just read right now in some other forum is that ETH Fair, when you deploy a contract, is showing up with chain ID 1. So if you have a transaction that happens on a chain ID 1, when you send that transaction, your private key is being sent to that, to verify that transaction with your public key. And so any chain that has the same ID can happen at the same time. So if you sell something on ETH POW, you sell all your ETH to cash out and sell it at some exchange, they have the chance to replay that attack on Ethereum POS and have the same thing happen again. So you think you're being slick on this other chain, and you're selling and cashing out when you're doing it on the same on the main POS as well. So you run that risk of running those replay attacks. So I wouldn't do it. I don't know anybody that in my dev circle that is trying to do anything of the such. So I mean, if you're that degen, fuck it. But I wouldn't recommend it. That's my theory.
Yeah, it sounds like anything can happen, right?
I mean, there's been a lot of talk of like people selling their NFT on ETH POW and then keeping it on POS to cash in. But you run that risk. You run that risk of something being replayed, attacked, and then I'm waiting to see all those Twitter posts saying, "Oh, I got hacked, and like, what did you do? Oh, I went on ETH POW and did this. So we'll see what happens. In the timeline pretty soon.
My last question on the merge is, realistically, right? How much time, how much input does your boy Vitalik put in? Like, how essential is he really, right, to the Ethereum ecosystem? Of course, um, and I'm asking because what if he decides to, be a unicorn tomorrow, right, and focus all his life and in something else? How how would that affect Ethereum? And how involved is he actually into the Ethereum system?
Um, eh, Vitalik is a pretty vital leadership position in the space. As for like a hardcore developer, I know he has his inputs, but I think he's shifted his from being a core developer to the C. I don't want to say the CEO, but like the thinker in a sense, like the visionary that sets the path. And he's not the say all to everybody. He just throws his idea out, and if the consensus follows with it, it's good. The reason I like Ethereum and why I like Vitalik is because his vision is not about the money. He again, he's not the CEO of a chain, which is totally insane to me. But he's a visionary for what this goal purpose was. As an old school Bitcoiner, and his role. Like if Vitalik was supposed to die, like there was a whole Reddit thing, like gosh, I think 2016, 17, where they say Vitalik died. Like the whole ETH like market like nearly dumped, and he had to actually take a picture with like the newspaper of that day to show that he wasn't dead. So it's like he's such an icon in the space that if you were to leave, it would definitely slow things down. But at this point, you've got so many people that are now within that vision, that share that same vision, that share that same consensus, that there's a lot of other people that just don't have the limelight as Vitalik, because he was one of the co-creators and he's one of the starters. So definitely go. It's he is the person to look to. But there's a lot of other people in this space that I can't even pronounce their last names, but are very vital to the space as well. Creators of GoETH, the GoETH team, and stars. I can't even say it. I don't want to do justice to their name, but there's if Vitalik were to go away, the vision would still go on. It just we wouldn't have necessarily that same kind of leadership potential in a sense.
You can't say Gonzalez and Ramirez. Go ahead, Tadit.
No, it's actually like all Russian last names, and I do have a question, like Billy, like why is it like most of like these creators, like you have Anatoly and blah blah blah, Vitalik Buterin, you have all these Russian names. Why is it that most of like the creators of these blockchains are from like desa descendencia?
That's a really great question. I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, literally, a lot of the people that I work with on Gnosis chain are all from Europe, and it's just there's a heavy developer scene. Like, I mean, honestly, you think of programmers, you think of Russian programmers, you think of Indian programmers, but a lot of places, especially in Argentina, any place that has major inflationary issues, major issues where political pressures on there, those people are incentivized to figure out a solution to get out of where they're at, right? So, MakerDAO, Mariano, one of the biggest, oldest DAOs, the maker of DAI token, the like heavy team is from Argentina, so it's not like they don't exist. It's just, again, this theory is a lot of people used to be anonymous before. Like, everybody was just a Discord name, it was, Ask Blaster 79 is who I'd be working with from time to time. And I would have no idea whether they were male, female, old person in Indonesia, or, some kid from high school, we just didn't know. And so, but, it's just one of those things that a lot of things are happening in Europe where it's a lot of cross country. It's easier to get to, and everybody can work together. There's also, I would say, a little bit of privilege in a sense where they're in better economical resources sometimes, and they can get together and not have to work for 3-4 months out of the year, so they can do like a hacker house or some kind of thing like as well. Go ahead, Tadit.
No. It's actually really, really interesting. Like right now that you were telling about Argentina, and I do believe right now that a lot of Latino, it's going to get a lot of attention. Like you also have Jose Tajenberg from, I forgot the name of his project, but very Escapit from Argentina as well. But also like I see like more like when you go towards DAOs, toward makers, towards when you involve finances and like growing of businesses, I see a lot of like Latinos like really starting to shine like on the background. No muy públicos, like really in the background, but also like that part of the Eastern European, like I've been able to travel over there. Like they also front a lot of like the crisis. Like it's not like Western Europe. It's also very different. Like things over there, like if you're in Prague, it could be as cheap as Mexico City. So they also have their own issues, like with their own salaries, et cetera, et cetera. on a different, like from Western Europe. So I think also that creates like that. And also I was reading that like in cryptography, like when we were really focused like on cryptography, like not only like on online like before, Russians have a really good education system towards that. Like I was reading that they have some of the best cryptographers in history, but I don't know if that's true or fake. I don't know. I read a lot of shit.
Yeah, no, mathematics. I mean, if we're looking at states and Latin Americas, we don't fare too well in mathematics globally. You know, we say USA number one, but we're like 47. So I would definitely say, yeah. There's definitely other countries with larger advantages with that kind of logic thinking, and that translates pretty well into programming and as well. But I mean, there's nothing stopping. Again, I see a lot of Latin America starting to really take shape now with access to more information, which is good. Like even in One Hive, where one of the first DAOs I went in, like a couple of the developers I didn't even know. You know, they're in Southern America. I was like, whoa, I didn't know that. You know, and there's a lot of members. You know, NT that pops in from out. He's I think from Mexico, and then you have Chuy Garcia that from TEC Commons in Central Mexico. I'm not sure if he went to the Holametaverso meetup, but I told him to go. But there's a lot of people starting to pop up. Again, before I didn't know who anybody was. Like this 2020 thing, everybody was just a name to me, just a random name. It could be like one of the web developers I work with happened to be some girl from Canada that I had no idea until we actually spoke. I was like, oh, I thought you were a dude. So it's a totally new thing for me. Is like, and it kind of blows my mind. I was like, why is everybody doxing themselves right now? So it's a big concept for me of like, everybody was talking about privacy, and all of a sudden, like this new 2021 era, I was like, hey, look at me. It's a totally different scope that it took me a little while to get used to. But I figure identity and being able to relate to people in certain spaces has its power. And now that I see more and more Latin America, you have like Bogota that's happening with ETH. God, I can't remember the thing that's happening in October. Gosh, I can't remember.
DevCon.
Yeah, DevCon. Then you had ETH Global in Mexico, a few weeks ago. So there's definitely more and more people. And that had a big turnout, which was really, really nice. So it's definitely something that's transferring over there, and I'm seeing more and more people take advantage of that. And it brings joy to me. I'm just hoping for more, unity and working together on something really cool. Go for it, Taddy.
No, actually, over there in Bogota, we met Yoshiro. That he has been working also with Cali with some projects in that city. That's really amazing, right? So you never know the talent that you're gonna meet. But also, yesterday we had a space on in La Noche about the merch as well, and they were bringing something over here. Like they're seeing a lot of hackathons go on, but they were telling about people. Oh, si conocí este güey que ganó un hackathon, and he told me it's the fifth one he won, but he didn't develop any of the other 5 projects he showed in the hackathons. So he was telling also to be careful with that kind of stuff, because there's a lot of people that are going to take advantage of those things.
Oh yeah, man. Like I mean, to get into the hackathon stuff, I'm always sus. Like it kind of upsets me sometimes, but I felt like I had projects that were winners, right? But sometimes I lose out to like this team that I was like, we had 3 days to do this, and you're looking like you spent 2 years on this, kind of stuff. Maybe they're that good, maybe, but I'm always sus. I'm like, wait a minute. And then one time I had a really solid project with like money streaming and payment systems, and I was pretty proud of it. And then I lost to an inaugural team, and I was like, well, that's nice, that was cool, but it was like, I kind of felt like, was it because it was an inaugural team, or was it because their quality was better? They were both good ideas, but I had that kind of weird feeling, like I felt mine was better. Maybe I'm biased, maybe I'm getting hated on by the women right now, but that's kind of how I felt. Like I didn't feel like, oh wow, they kicked my ass and they deserved it. It was more like, I don't know, so there's definitely biases in hackathons. There's definitely biases in who sponsors the hackathons. But the point is, you go to learn, you go to win. If you get a little bit of funding, just go with it. That's awesome. I've won a few that have like awesome. It helps me develop more stuff, or put like donate more time to certain things, or hold workshops. Well, that's been nice. But I for me, it's like I don't really wear jewelry, like I don't do that flex. So like I don't put winner of this hackathon or winner of this. I just keep doing what I do. So like different ways of approaches.
It's incredible how you hide all your 100 ETH, Billy.
I don't want to get robbed. That's why I always look broke when everybody sees me. I look like I'm broke, so they'll rob you instead.
Wait, I'm the broke one though. How does that work?
Hey, no, right now, just to bring that back to the conversation, I also had the pleasure to meet Cata Villegas over here. And she's also in the gaming industry. So right now, I don't know if she heard about Billy talking about how now there's ships available and there should be less hate for the blockchain because with this POS. So just wanted to welcome her and thank you for being over here. I met her in person in Querétaro.
Awesome. Yeah, look, when the I can't even think when COVID started, the pandemic. I'm a loss for words right now. So when the pandemic started, and then Nvidia announced that they're going to have the 3080, I was stupid enough to think that if I waited up to 5 a.m. in the morning, I think I would be able to get one. I was wrong, and to this day, I still do not have a 3080. So I'm waiting for the 4080s to come out, which they already announced. So if you're a hardcore gamer and you wanted to buy a video card, I would just wait till like the end of the year when they announce the new one. So just learn that for the hardcore gamers out there too.
Wait till the end of the year to play
No,
games?
the latest video card. They're going to do an announcement on there for the 40. There was
I see.
a leak on there. I'm always looking for the alpha and cool stuff. The sad part is like buy a bunch of games that I have very little time to actually play it because I actually have to develop stuff. So that's kind of sucks.
Yeah, I've been wanting to play Axie Infinity, that soccer game, all these games that we kind of explored, but I haven't had a chance to. But one of these days, I'm going to have a complete day of just gaming. And we should get together, Billy. You're like 10 minutes away, I think. 15
Yeah,
minutes
I'm
away.
pretty close. I always see these LA events, but then they're always like in Santa Monica. I'm like, fuck that, the traffic. So I'm kind of like, do I really want to go through traffic to see people and say what's up, talk shit, and then take out 2 hours later? So I'm like, I'm gonna go out pretty soon one day. There was like this event that was happening today. I think Blue Dot was hosting it over in like Culver City. I was really gonna go. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to this one. There's a couple developers. I don't mind shooting the shit, talking about the merge stuff, all that nerd stuff. But then I found out it's like my brother-in-law's birthday, so then I got to go like sing happy birthday to this dude. I'm like, oh man, so I'm skipping out on that one.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of things going on. I do want to ask Billy, can you explain as much as you can what happened with the Jarritos incident yesterday? Like, I know there was a vulnerability, right? I think it was on their contract or on their wallet. I don't think holders got affected. But do you mind explaining to us what generally happened with that?
I think somebody that holds the wallet keys started clicking on crazy links and got their private key stolen. As sad as that sounds. So
Really, you're getting a little bit raw. You're sounding like the robot from Rob.
okay.
Yeah, I thought it was me. I'm like,
oh,
yeah, you sound like a robot, Billy.
Can you hear me now? Is that okay?
No, I can hear you, but it's not.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on. Testing.
Yeah, it sounds like you're like about to lose connection or something. Like,
okay,
kind of getting cut off.
Sounds like you're in Web 1. Sounds like you're in Web 1.
AOL.
Anything better now? No, that's crazy.
And we can still hear you and understand you, but it's like this like staticky noise behind, like as your voice comes in.
Okay, that's weird. But yeah, what were we at? Oh, Corridos. Yes. So I believe, and it's quite unfortunate for like a company that large, but I think there was only one owner to the contract, and it's probably a bad click, and something happened, and they got the private keys and they took ownership of the contract. As simple as it sounds. When I do a larger scale, or pretty much almost every contract that I do, as I do it to a multi-sig, right? For those that don't know what a multi-sig, it is basically a contract wallet that requires more than one person to sign off on it. So, if like I'm gonna switch the flip, like if you have a boyfriend that likes to spend money, okay, ladies, and he's always spending time like swiping the card and he doesn't know how to budget. Imagine every time he swiped his card, you got a text message. He's trying to buy a new designer shirt, and you on your text phone can say yay or nay. That's basically what a multi-sig is, right? Every time someone does a transaction, somebody else can verify it or not verify it. So that requires more than one, private key. So whenever I do a contract that has anything to do with any financials, I have it on a multi-sig. It doesn't seem like they did that for the Doritos contract. So whoever had the private keys, they lost them. and somebody else has taken ownership. So there is some dangers to that. I mean, nothing major like where you have to like revoke cash or anything like that. But in the contract itself, there is the ability to make more mints and increase the cap. So whatever the cap is, they could literally make 1 million more if they wanted to, or they could change the token URI. They could literally change the image of the NFT. So there's a little bit of power on there because they wrote it in the contract, which is quite unfortunate. So I don't know what the person would do if they're malicious or if they would just sell the ownership back. But I couldn't think of anything else, like looking at the contract and the transactions, of what they did to take ownership other than somebody just clicking away the rights.
I'm going to summarize a little bit in case anyone didn't completely capture that. But Billy just mentioned that more than likely, the holder of the keys to the contract, the Jarritos contract, more than likely clicked on a bad link, and that's how they got access to it. And Billy suggested that when he produces these smart contracts, he makes sure that there's a multi-sig, which means it requires multiple signatures to have a transaction go forward, right? Which leads me to the next question. I mean, I'm guessing that a company like them hired someone, right, to do that. It sounds like I'm not a developer. It sounds like something that would have been thought of, Billy, or considered.
My opinion on Web2 companies coming in Web3 and then dropping an NFT project is not very high. I mean, they gave a couple jobs to a few people in the community, and they were trying to make project with the community. But my personal opinion is, some exec or an intern said, hey, let's do an NFT project, and we're going to make this return, and whoever signed off on it, and they found they did one that was like, hey, Twitter, who's the best smart contract dev out there, and then whoever raised their hand was the guy they hired, and it just happened. Like I said before, like you could find a bad lawyer and they can write you a contract, and then another good lawyer will destroy it. It really depends on how the approach was. It doesn't look like a custom contract. It looks like it went through some kind of smart contract wizard. I'm not really to throw negative or trying to throw too much shit on Jarritos, but I felt like when they were buying NFTs and like saying hello, where the Latinos at, it felt like to me when someone comes to you for small talk before they ask you for a favor. All the small talk. That's just me being defensive in the space overall. Because whenever I see a company coming in, hey guys, hey cool, like the old man dressed up in like Supreme and shit, like hey fellow cool kids, let's do this, and they're trying to extract money. It just, I feel like you cut corners, and when you cut corners in this space, everybody's checking your math. North Korea is always going to check your math to make sure 1 + 1 = 2, and if it's not, they're going to take advantage.
I agree with you, but I also think that that everyone, and that's my personal opinion, that most companies, most entities, more groups, more businesses will enter the space, right? And if someone asks me, or when people ask me, my answer to them is, look, our community, or the Web3 community, is on Twitter. You need to get on Twitter, right? Well, and I think that is the case for a lot of these companies coming in. So there is, I guess, a right way or wrong way to do it, but I don't think necessarily that they're all in a way malicious, right? That they're just trying to figure out, just as us as individuals are trying to out. Some of them are doing it right, some of them are doing it wrong, but I don't think. I think. Go ahead, Ted.
No, don't worry. And I actually coincide with you. And right now, the moment with Jarritos, it's not about what happened, like the security vulnerability. Yeah, there's things that companies can do better, and we're all gonna commit errors, right? But it's the way that you react to it, and the trajectory that you decide to take with it, right? Like we have the Selección Nacional Mexicana with their 100 jerseys and NFT. They didn't do 10,000, and they have millions of audience over here in Mexico. We're 120 million people, and everybody loves soccer over here, football. So that's also something to notice, right? Like how companies approach I think also like it's good to consider like the approach of Starbucks and everything that is happening right now towards the Web3 developments, even with the merge, with all the bad news on the market, with everything going down. It's also important to check like the decisions that some of these big companies are going to take. We need to coexist. Some people are really radical, like, oh no, we don't want them. In the end, like this is an open window for everybody, and it's a matter of time to the mom and pop shop businesses also come over here. And the good thing about it is that the tools that these big companies are going to have, these small startups are also getting them. So they have that potential. If they get their shit together and start learning and start busting their asses and really working things together, like all these small companies and even like solopreneurs, like people that start to do their own business, like they're gonna have these tools. So they already have them. Many of them are available, and people don't use them. So that's really interesting.
I'm gonna counter it. Like the way I see it from the outside is what are you contributing to the space versus taking out, right? So we see a lot of these companies, Nike and all these other companies, the big names. Everybody gets excited. Yay, they're here. We're getting what is it, adoption and all that. And so now they're selling you these NFTs for 2 ETH, 10 ETH, and then they come out with like $20 million, $50 million, and you have an NFT that you might flip for a couple thousand or a couple ETH, right? So you're happy that you made the flip, but they're still walking away with $100 million that they took out of the ecosystem, right? Versus them contributing, okay, now we're going to give back to Gitcoin, to the open source, or we're now going to give back to this community to help people learn about the networks, or help people open up wallets, or this Gitcoin grant, or supply to open source. That's the difference of how I see the approach. Very extractive. I'm going to be defensive because you're not contributing to the space. You're just extracting from the people that are here. My goal is to not make anybody that I onboard a consumer, but a contributor to the space, and that's kind of the goal. I'm not developing to make Nike richer. They're already doing a well enough job on their own. I'm developing for the random guy in some third world country to have an opportunity to make a few bucks, and now he can offset his income and have a better life for wherever he's at. Not make his life a millionaire, but I mean, now he doesn't have to worry about food or something. If I can help with the technology on that versus getting some NFT Nike, it's the black and white for me on there. If you're not contributing back and you're just extracting, I really don't want anything to do with you in a sense. That's my opinion, or at least.
I agree. I would just say that some entities, yes, definitely not all. There's some really shady ones going on too, but I think some entities are actually trying to figure out the space, right? Like they may, they may not get it right. It's just like some of us aren't getting right, but I think it's like almost like when people are getting a website, right? I know it's totally different, but it's something that we should expect from all companies to do so, right? We should expect all companies to come into the Web3 space, but it's just how they come about it and how they um, interact with the community that will make that happen. But saying that too, um, some may not even need a community, right? Some may not even make this a part of it. It just the community and users being attracted to them for whatever reasons, right? They don't need to give value to it. They just are attracted, right? Like the Nikes or so on. So, but yeah, I think my feedback on that is we should expect everyone to get in the space. How they do it is another kind of story, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, there's been great approaches to certain aspects, but lately I've seen everybody just kind of been extractive, and that's why I'm like, my theory is not necessarily utopian, and I'm a pretty realistic guy. But I was like, when I see a lot of people saying, "Hey, VCs are funding everything," it's like my approach is like, well, why are you giving up a piece of your dream for someone that has your money? Like personally, I don't know anybody that has, they've made money and they've made big rounds, but they trade their life for it, and then at the end, it's like, man, I wouldn't have done it. That's just my personal experience. Like they traded a big chunk of their life and a lot of their family time because they're working to keep their VCs happy and make these numbers. And at the end of the day, they end up getting pushed out by their own company that you basically gave their life up to build, versus being able to be funded by the community. Somebody shares your vision and somebody's like, all right, let's bootstrap this guy from the community. And then if you win, everybody else wins. That's the kind of utopia that I'm looking for. So like, instead of asking these random guys, everybody complains, all these VCs don't give people of color, all these VCs, don't do all this stuff. It's like, well, why are you playing the game? Don't play that game. Make your own game. That's what Bitcoin did. They got tired of playing the bank. They made their own game. And then all of a sudden, everybody wants to go play in this game. So it's like, if there's a problem, you don't have to, play that game anymore. Make your own rules. Do your thing. And if it's good, then it'll catch on. That, again, a little bit utopian, but that's kind of the goal.
Go ahead, Ted.
I do believe that right now there's like a really big shift in the way we're even going to be naming the kind of funding that we're seeing, because like let's look at Token Proof from funds, Mexican guy. He just raised $5 million. But if you look into the investors, there's a lot of angel investors. There's a lot of people from the space that are really investing into this company. So there's a lot of groups that are forming as well. And you're starting to get like informal DAOs where the same people from the space, like let's say this project might not sell 10,000 pieces at $200 because there might not be that interest. But let's get 10 or 100 people that are willing to invest $10,000, $100,000. People that can afford it to go for phase one, and then they can go more public towards all the community, right? So I'm starting to see that as well. And I don't know how to call it as well, because I don't know if it would be VC, angel, mix of everything, right? Because there's a lot of people that are starting to become big investors here in the space that might have been flippers or founders or not even founders, just lucky to hop over here. And now I'm seeing that shift of funds.
Yeah, I think Token Proof is a great way for like evolution of how it goes. I'm hoping that it works out the best. So far, so good. Like they're one of the few people that are actually doing this on there. So like, I think it's a new innovation. Again, it's not the traditional, I'm giving up all this and now I work for you to get a piece back. That's kind of the goal. It's like, well, what's the difference of like being employed? So yeah, I like the way the trend is going, and I hope for a future more of like people that made it in the space to give back, in a sense, right? And that's what I'm talking about, not being extractive, right? Nike doesn't come back and do that. They'll hit you back with like, a kind of VC type fund there. So like, it's depending on like we want the small guy, we want the middle guy to make it in the space. We want to make it like what happened to Tiffany's, like everybody had all this hype and they made it very exclusive, and then they had this NFT that dumped, and now everybody forgot about it, but they still made theirs. Tiffany still made their money. They made the ETH. So it's kind of like, we have a memory of goldfish.
But what's the difference between Tiffany selling a diamond, that is worth 1x, and they sell it for 15x because it's a Tiffany's, right? People will still go and buy that ring, and they're not getting anything back, right? I mean, or a shirt, right, or a purse. They'll pay thousands of dollars, and they just get that, and they don't, they don't expect Tiffany to reward them. They don't expect to resell. I mean, some people do actually, but they're not expecting anything. So I think, not that I'm one of those people, but I think there's a market for that too, where people are like, oh, you want a digital piece of our brand? Sure, here it is. You should have $1,000. And there's people out there that love that brand so much, that love that attention or whatever that is so much, that they're willing to fork that $10,000. Is there something wrong with that? I don't think so. I mean, as long as those people made their choices like reasonably and they weren't forced to, right? Sure, go ahead and buy a Tiffany's NFT for $10,000. Yes, Tad.
No, I also agree with you, and just putting that business perspective side and just trying to put myself in the shoes of Tiffany and what Starbucks said, like many of them are looking at it as a marketing stunt. Like they're trying to approach communities. They did an approach with the punks. They did sold out, or they didn't. I don't fucking remember right now. I don't know. They dumped whatever they did, but they were selling a physical article, right? Something that they have been building for many years. So at the same time, yeah, they're extracting that value in one way or another. Then you have the case of Nike, which is a little bit different. They never announced the community before the reveal. Oh, we just got acquired by Nike, and now we're owned by Nike. So that was a little bit different. But I think Tiffany was pretty clear. Like we're selling this piece of jewelry, and some people buy other pieces of jewelry with no NFTs that are worth much more for limited editions in Tiffany's, right? So I do see that as a marketing and as a selling approach. as a selling stunt, and I think it helped for them, because in reality, like the money that they raise from this, it's not going to change them as a company. It's not going to give them $1 billion more valuation. It's just another income shit, like stream of revenue that was a one time, and they don't know if they're going to do it. So I think it really depends. Like, you really got to put yourself in the shoes of the company, whether it's public traded, whether it's private, whether it's small, whether it's medium, because we're going to get like small, medium, and large companies approach, and some small ones approach with the really wrong approach, some medium ones with the wrong approach, some big ones with the wrong approach, and all those categories are also, some of them are going to have really, really good approaches.
I agree. I mean, like, as a business owner, you want to make as much money as possible, but as a, I don't want to say a figure in the space, but when NFTs were hot, and like literally an NFT project was like dropping every day, I had the opportunity to literally drop an NFT a week, or just everybody was looking for projects and things like that. So it's like, one, I could make the money, right? But then there's like, well, what good does this do for the space? What good does this do for the people in the community? There's a choice where you got to make, where it's like, is this towards the vision that we're going for, or are we just doing the same shit on a more expensive chain? That's what it's down to.
Well, I think you're in my opinion, you're thinking of two different communities, right? One is this community, which is us individuals, maybe small businesses, people that get together on Twitter, right? That's one community. For Tiffany, they don't have a community. They have clients and they have shoppers, right? So for them, it's like, how can we get our shoppers? How can we get into this space? They are not there to be like, how can we give back to the blockchain community? That is, I really doubt any of them in any meeting ever said that, right? It was more like, here's a space. People are interested in fancy NFTs, whatever that means, right? They're in high end, they might call it, right? NFTs. There's a market for it, right? There's 10,000 people out there in the world that are really willing to buy a Tiffany's NFT for $10,000 or $30,000. Now, are those people from our community? Possibly. I mean, there's people, in our community with Lamborghinis, with all kinds of different things, right? Are they also interested in a $10,000 Tiffany's? Possibly. Do they have the right to buy it if they think that's going to make them either better, or whatever reasons they have? Like, sure. I don't think Tiffany's, and those actually might already be existing Tiffany's customers. They just bought a $5,000 Tiffany's watch, right, the weekend before. So buying a $10,000 NFT just is something else they can show on their phone, right, or to their friends. Um, so yeah, I think there's different communities, and I don't think these large brands are coming in here and saying, "Oh wow, how can we help these big communities?" Right? And I don't think they're here either to say, "How can we, take from this community?" Right? I mean, if it's a business, they see it as a different way. Again, they see it as offering a product that is in need, right? So it's different communities. I don't think these large companies are seeing it as an incentive or as a way to put money into the community, but much more rather how to provide a product in the digital space to our clients who are already in the digital space. Ted, yeah.
Really fast, like I also want to mention the positive impact that it leaves in the space. Like, what about all those small jewelries that were doubting about hopping onto the train, and they had their Web3 plans to integrate to their business models? So this kind of proves it, right? And the same thing happens with Starbucks. Like, I got a lot of friends right now calling me like, hey, tell me more about Web3, because Starbucks was the one who mentioned it. But I told them, and they were like, no, you're bullshitting me, or stuff like that, right? And also, we had Board Coffee Lab in a space 2 or 3 days ago, and they were mentioning how for them that they're like a small project using the IP rights of some Bored Apes. And it's a Latino project from Colombia and from Argentina, I believe, in Venezuela. And it has a bunch of people that we know involved. They mentioned it, right, that it was really important that Starbucks came for them because it proved the model that they're trying to use. Like, they're not trying to oversell using NFTs, but they're trying to sell and use like those reward programs where they can start like involving their communities with blockchain. So I believe like we really need to focus. Like, there's always a bad side. Like, yeah, they could take some liquidity, or Tiffany, we could see it that way, but we can also see how many businesses in jewelry or in that sector, like it really inspired, like, oh, if they did it, we can do it. So now, like, all these people that had their dreams, like now they're a little bit more motivated. And that's my viewpoint as an entrepreneur.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna like just have us flashback to like 8 months ago when we were seeing people's lives change because people were like digging their art. Like they were a little bit, I don't want to say early to the space, but one of the pioneers. You got, kids paying out their student loans, and artists having their lives change because people started getting a following, and that narrative shifted to more of the people that had money and the flex. So by having them in the space, they have now taken the focus off the small teams that were delivering, and now the focus is more on them. And that's kind of where I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not blaming the business. The businesses are doing well and their ideas, but as a community, it's like, wait a minute, we're already making these rich people richer. Whatever. What about these other people? What about the community? How can we lift them up versus trying to do a flip on whatever Nike or whatever drop that's coming out? And that's kind of where I want to be the refocus. We want to onboard people and get people to, well, why do you want to onboard people? Right now in this space, like, why would you want to onboard somebody right now? Where's the opportunity, in a sense, that you would see to buy the next, Tiffany drop, or what do you see in the space that's causing it? Other than pumping your own bags. So I'm having different ways of how to do certain things. So like I'm trying to figure out a way to onboard people without even having to onboard them. Creating meta transactions where you pay the gas for somebody, so they don't have to go and set up an account on Coinbase or do anything else like that. An artist can draw a picture and then sell it, and then when it sells, now you're incentivized to make a wallet and collect that cash, right? Instead of having to create a MetaMask, store your private keys, buy some ETH on Coinbase, send it out, already lose some money in transactions, then pay to mint it out, and now you're already in the negative $40 or whatever it costs, right? And then your thing doesn't even sell, right? That's a bad feeling. So it's about changing those lives. And then $40 for someone in the US isn't so bad. $40 for somebody like in some crazy town in Latin America is a whole month of work, right? So if you can create that barrier, that's the kind of onboarding I'm trying to work towards too, and bring the community back to like, hey, let's not forget about Venezuela. Let's not forget about Cuba. All these different ideas that we kind of forgot about because we're now focusing. Oh, look, Netflix is going to throw something in IPFS. I was like, all right, they're good. They're good already. Let's worry about the people that are not so good.
Well, I think most of us in this space are actually doing what you're describing, right? Whereas like we're giving or trying to give platforms and stages to those people, right? Um, where but I actually think it's a mix. It's a mix of everything. I think some of us are on that ethos, right? That we want to help, that we want to collaborate, that we want to empower the most vulnerable, right? And I think we're doing as a community, we're doing that already in some form or another. And we're doing it as individuals. I don't think there's a big entity out there that's saying, "Oh, we're going to do this." As I think as individuals, we're all kind of helping and amplifying each other. But I do not expect at the same time for Tiffany's and Nike to do that. Not that I agree with how they're doing it, but it's like everyone's going to go into Web3, right? So there's space for the Tiffany's, there's space for the Teslas, there's space for the Apples, there's space for, Apple's gonna, I'm sure they're gonna come up with some type of Web3 NFT, some type of announcement in the next year or so. Amazon, I'm sure will do so as well. Google will do so as well, right? And they just have different, just like they had adopted these different technologies for their own reasons. But now I think it gives us individuals and as a community to actually take part of that, right? So we're get a chance to actually redefine or renegotiate the VCs, right? Because I don't think VCs are completely like bad, but I think there is a chance for us during these times to redefine those things, right? How VC money can impact my project, right? Without VCs taking ownership of it all, or and I think they're seeing that as well. So it becomes a chance for us to redefine all those approaches, right? To redefine how we invested before, as individuals, as a community. But again, I don't expect the Home Depots, the Nikes to come in and say, "Hey, how can we help the blockchain community?" They're going to continue doing the same thing they've been doing for a long time, is offering products to their customers, whether it's physically in real life or it's digital.
I'm going to restart the Twitter and
Yeah,
but just what that concept
yeah,
is, these companies are going to keep doing the same thing, if people keep doing the same thing, right? You can take the boy out of the hood, but the hood out of the boy. So, you've been conditioned to accept the way these companies do things. So when they do it in Web3 and the blockchain, you're just going to accept the way to do it again, unless you force them to make a change. And that's kind of the concept. I mean, going back to Bitcoin is forcing people to make a change. Ethereum is forcing people to make a change. But if you come in and say, oh, just keep doing the same stuff, they're never going to change. I'm going to go ahead and restart through that concept.
Right. Yeah, well, and I think that was my point. Like, it's a chance for us to redefine that, right? Even though these are things that are happening. Hopefully Billy jumps right back in, but what you're saying, how these companies come, it's up to us how we want to react as individuals, and with those companies, right? But I do think there's opportunity to redefine how we deal with VCs, how we deal with the large companies coming into this space, right? I think that's also a little chance. So hopefully you go back on. Welcome, T. Thank you for coming up to the stage.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry if I'm in somewhere, like I'm literally in the gym, so I kind of listen to this just to feed my mind, and I'm very appreciative of everything you guys have been saying. I think what Billy was really touching on was, I think the whole like concept of cryptocurrency and decentralized finance kind of started as a fuck you to pretty much the current banking system, and then just needing to onboard as many people as possible. And so keeping that ethos, like when we see these huge conglomerates coming into the space, kind of in a sense to take from the space, but as much as they are kind of signaling and onboarding like the current Web2 communities to learn more about Web3, we can't lose that ethos of like we need to keep this rebellious spirit so that when they do come in, they're not regurgitating what you've seen time and time again in the Web2 space.
I agree, T. And I think that's what I meant. Try to communicate as far as it's a chance for us to redefine that, right? How it was before. This is a transition to that, right? So we can ask, if Nike was to ask me, right, or ask us, to treat it differently, the different approach, right? Not necessarily what it has been, but really, I don't expect them to go anywhere. But I do think there's a chance for us to again redefine those relationships. Yes, Tadit.
I do think that right now that change it's starting to happen. Like Fox Deportes, like a lot of people know already, it's gonna have their space, and I believe they're gonna open a few more. So that's a big platform, like Fox Sports in Spanish. And one of the things that I'm liking of them is that they have been approaching a lot of the community members. And when they approached me, they told me, "Hey, who do you think that brings value to the community? We also want to speak to them. And if you know any like Latin project that it's in sports, let us know as well." Like. So I think that right now it's that moment, and companies are starting to realize it. I do believe like what the CMO from Starbucks said was really, really key. Like saying that they were researching the market. It took them 6 months for to launch the project, which if you ask me, for a big company like Starbucks, it's really, really fast time to make a huge announcement. And they told their compromise was that they were merging it with their traditional reward system, right? Their loyalty program. So it's really, really interesting the way that they said that they did not want to come and make it like a marketing stunt, but create real changes and take the risk of exploring these new venues, right, for them. So I believe it's important to see that the change it's starting to happen. Some companies are not going to give a damn about it, and they're just going to come and try to step on it. But what Billijitsu said, it's really true. Like if we start to allow like a lot of those bad behaviors that we were supposed to do it, like it's going to start happening more and more. So I really think that we need to not demonize or satanize all the companies, but really take a look into their approach and the real intentions.
I'm gonna pop in and just chime like just an example, like Celsius, right? So Celsius was a centralized platform where you could donate your money and they generate a yield for you, what are 5-10% or something like that, right? So everybody knows that they crashed hard after the Luna crash, right? But the one key factor that I want everybody to remember is they had to pay back their DeFi loan, and the people that deposited their money still have not been paid back. And why is the case? Because the smart contract platform did not care whether it was a billionaire or a person with $2 or anything. If you didn't pay back your loan in time, you were going to get liquidated, right? And so now, you don't get this phone call, oh, I'm going to pay you Monday, this billionaire or whatever. It didn't care. So they had to pay back their loan. And so I was under the assumption, wow, they paid back their loan, they're going to pay back all their creditors, right? And then all of a sudden it went to the courts. And then all of a sudden now it's going to take 8 years for whoever to deposit it to get back. But DeFi got it instantly because it's fair and because there's no human intermediate, right? And so now the judge is saying, oh, anybody that wants their money back has to apply. So they didn't ask who you were when you deposited it, but when you want to get it back, now you have to fill out all these forms and do all these things. And if you're not on top of it, some big corporation is going to take it from you. And that's what I'm talking about, being fair and then playing by the rules. Like, it didn't matter who you were. It was, the smart contract was careless. It didn't matter. And that's what I call about fair. And that's kind of my goal. So now all these people are kind of incentivizing these large corporations, and, they're doing a lot of real world assets. So they're just taking your money off chain and then sending you like a jacket, big deal, but that's kind of the ethos of what I'm trying to like push, like, make it fair. It doesn't matter if you're a big corporation, make it fair and make it equal. And then you start throwing real world stuff, there's a lot to be determined on that for real world assets, real estate and all this other stuff that can happen. We're far from it technologically wise because of legal issues, but it can happen. It's just a matter of like, which way are we going to approach it? Are we going to do it the old school way where there's human interference, or we're going to try to do it smart contract automated where it doesn't care who you are? There's no personal favors. There's no backdoor deals. That's kind of the ethos that I want to. And just one more point on that for like, following the big corporations. I'm going to use Learn as an example. Learn, for those that don't know, are kind of like doing this educational proof on chain where you take a course and you get like an online NFT credit that's non-transferable. It's a cool idea. You go to college and then you get your units and then you have a diploma at the end of it. It's a great idea. Let's say it catches on. And then let's say Harvard says, hey, this is a great idea. We're going to do it too. How many people are going to dump Learn to go get a Harvard degree because they can do it on chain? It's like, where does the community stay loyal? That's where it comes down to. Like, the community either rejects the big corp that extracts, or it brings them in. And that's kind of like where I'm trying to push out for the community to make that decision.
But Billy, I'll counter that by saying, what if Harvard, right, which I think is a very good possibility. At one point, I'm just using Harvard as an example, right? Says to learners, right? I'm just being hypothetical here. We want to use your technology. How can we hire you? How can we license your technology to create these learning platforms for ourselves, right? Which I think is a possibility, not with Harvard, but with other schools, right? Where they don't necessarily block learners or switch to learn or compete with learners, but that actually would make it, a part of their system, which I think are other possibilities that can happen in the space. Hi, Vida. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Hi, I didn't catch what you had to say on that last one. I had to take a quick call, but I did catch what Billy was saying, and I'm so glad that you came back, Billy, because I could hear little pieces of what you were saying, and I was like into it, but I couldn't catch all of it because of your sound. So thank you for restarting, because I was like, oh, I'm dying here. Is it my phone? I went out, came back in. It wasn't me. Sorry about that, but I really value what you had to say, and I think it's part of the community's responsibility to say, well, we're so glad you're here, Harvard. Check out Learn, partner with Learn, and that we advocate for our own people, because I know that when Jarritos came in here, it was important that Sandy had the support of the community. It's important that Laura has the support of the community. It's important that, we're mentioning people like Tatted when people come into the community. We're like, yes, this is who you want. This is who we trust within our community, and this is how we would like to see you show up, and to like be really diligent about not getting starstruck when big companies come in and just doing whatever to be part of what is already happening, because you can do that outside. You can do that all the time. You can buy only exclusively Nike. You can shop at Tiffany now. So like, let's be a little bit mindful about the delicacy of our, like, how delicate our ecosystem still is, because it is still blooming and blossoming and like still growing so much that that we as a community advocate for our own people and that we set those standards now. But go ahead, sorry.
It's okay. It's a good point, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. But if I was going to do an NFT project 6 months ago, the formula would be: let me grab a random woman to be my community manager. Let me grab a minority or two to be put on the team, and now I'm diverse. So if I'm going to be a company, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Who has the most followers? Who has the most influence in the space? Let me hire them, and then they're going to be my face for my ultimate goal, which is to extract. Again, I come from the trust nobody kind of aspect, so I'm always going to be critical of how everything's approaching versus, all right, they've been part of the community, they've been giving back, they've been funding this thing because it's part of their marketing thing, and then over time, 6-7 months later, hey, we're doing an NFT project that is going to go towards this project, and then we're going to keep the rest. That total honesty for me is way more. I would invest. I mean, oh, okay, they've been doing this, and this, and now they're going to do this with the funds. In it versus, hey, we're dropping a project and here's our community manager, go.
That's one of the biggest, I think, one of the biggest potentials that I find in this space is the availability for transparency. And you, if you want to, you can always see where the money goes. You can see who's doing what. There's always that transparency here that doesn't necessarily exist IRL. It takes a lot more digging out here to find out what's really going on, and inside of here it seems like there's more of that. But I think it's still going to be a matter of, like, do we trust our leaders? Do we trust the people that we are currently calling leaders in the community, the projects that we are currently supporting within our community? Are we just supporting them because they're cool and they're fun? Are we supporting them because we know the people? Like, I really appreciate what a lot of the conversations are being had with amongst the men in our community. The Latino men in our community are stepping up in a way that we haven't seen ever in any fucking playground before, in that you guys are treating each other like humans. You guys are supporting each other vigorously. You guys are lifting each other up. You're holding each other accountable. So I think that we have what it takes to build different relationships with companies inside of this space because of the people that currently exist in this ecosystem. So for me, I'm very hopeful about it, but I do see what you're pointing out. I mean, that's what's encouraging though, right? Is that there are people like you that are looking at it and seeing, like, let me look at every perspective on this, and let me put out a checklist of what would be required for me to feel comfortable in the situation, so that we can say, well, I trust Billy. That seems like a good set of roles. I that's something I would want to implement myself when I'm looking at things. So I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate that you guys take the time to have these conversations.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, ultimately the goal is to empower every individual person to be in control of their own stuff. Like as an artist, right? Like let's use Mint songs as an example, musicians, right? Any musician that minted their songs on Mint songs with their no code software truly did not own their content, right? Mint songs owned it. So whenever they fired their whole diverse team and all the drama that went behind that, any artist that wanted to like burn their stuff so they're no longer associated with Mint songs could not, right? So there's a whole technological balance that we have to adhere to empower the users, right? We're not trying to empower the developers. We're not trying to empower the lawyers. It's the people that use it. And that's kind of the beauty that I like about Bitcoin, is because it's so simplistic. You can either send it and that's all you can do, right? So Ethereum adds so many dynamics and so much interference that, to make an NFT project now from a third world country, well, now I have to hire this smart contract developer. Now I have to hire this lawyer for IP rights. Now I have to do, all this extra stuff that you financially can be overwhelming, that doesn't literally give a lot of space for a person out of the blue to be able to make this content, right? So we've kind of lost focus in giving opportunities for other people. Yeah, there's a lot of places to make money and stuff like that. And I use NFTs because it's really popular. I mean, there's token drops and other ways that you can approach it. But it's we've kind of lost the vision of, empowering people in generally versus making money or the biggest flip in a sense. And that's where I kind of battle, like, hey, let's refocus again, right? Let's turn it back. Let's use the technology and let's evolve this technology to do something good. Like, how can we fund, water in Michigan? Like the city doesn't do it. So how come we can't create some kind of program on there where people can donate in a smart contract, and that funds go directly to funding water, right? Instead of going it through like some kind of donation, I donate to the Red Cross, and then they have to send money to accounting, and then they have to pay the CEO, and then they have to pay for the gas, versus just sending it directly to the people in need. It changes the game, right? So if we can bring back that kind of situation, that's where, you know, the ultimate goal is, where I'm trying to do with the technology, right? Like, NFTs are fun, and there's definitely opportunities there, but I want to bring back the focus of like, hey, you could still run your own validator. So even if you have like just half an ETH, you can play a part in this. You know, it's, you can start, you know, I would suggest anybody to learn the basics of smart contracts, in a sense, like just understanding the way they're structured, just like any legal contract. Sign here on the bottom. Okay, oh, it has your name on it. There's certain things that you have to understand about smart contracts that you should be able to function. You shouldn't be afraid to connect your wallet to a dApp, you know, without fearing for your life. You know, there should be some kind of understanding education. And I feel that's what we're lacking in a lot of places. People are like, hey, sign up your MetaMask and here you go, and then see ya. And that's where they end it. Versus, oh, okay, instead of putting your life savings in one wallet address, you should have a hot wallet, you should have a cold wallet, and then you should have like a on-the-go wallet like you have on your cell phone. And that's general good, like, you know, wallet hygiene, right? You don't want to have it all in one shot. You see how many people lose their entire collections and life savings because they click this bad thing. So there's a lot of like education that needs to happen in place, a lot of understanding that needs to happen in place. And really the technology is very, very limited. You know, it's basically, you can just have it run like this smart contract that's limited to so many bytes in a transaction. And then you send it or it comes back. And that's what it comes down to. So I try to get people off the crypto Kool-Aid, in a sense, where it doesn't solve all problems, but the problems that it does solve can be done pretty easily or pretty efficiently. And as we're still figuring out more and more issues to solve that can be solved, it's a big issue. And I think the biggest one that I would say is real estate on chain is very difficult to do, because you have a real world asset that lives outside of the space, and then you have something that lives on chain. So they run in parallel. So on the chain, nobody can say yay or nay. But off chain, when you have a real house, you know, now the government can take it away from you, or anybody can take it away from you. So they're two separate entities. So, you know, I'm trying to refocus on like what we can do and what this technology has the capability of doing at this point in time.
And I think most of the items you mentioned, I think all have to do with community, right? As individuals in community, and I think, you know, I think this whole time, this whole uh, bear market transition, whatever you want to call it, just helps us redefine those things, right? And I don't think, for me, you know, helping people is at the top of the list, right? So I don't think, and I think for a lot of people in the community that I've met, have that ethos behind them, right? But one thing I was going to say too, that, you know, we're talking about companies coming to the space. I think what you mentioned also can be applied to individuals, right? There's individuals, of course, we've seen that are coming in with that same type of negative kind of spirit, right? Of trying to sell something that is, you know, is smoke, right? So I think in general, what you describe is happening in all around, but at the same time, there's another side to it, which I think is this community, right? And I don't think it's like one wins or the other wins. I think it's just a matter of how we're all moving forward in this space, and of course with different ethos, with different values, with different, you know, reasons, right? So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm pretty straightforward with a lot of people. Like, you know, I probably bumped head with a lot of people that I don't have ethos with. You know, maybe they hate me. I don't know. That's why I have the devil be. So in a sense that, you know, I always use this metaphor as like, you know, you have been building, you've been rebuilding your whole house, right? You painted the walls, you brought new furniture, and you want to have an open house party. Everybody's invited, and so far everybody's behaving, and then all of a sudden this new crew of people come in, and they start messing stuff up, and they start disorganizing your stuff. It's like, hey, you know, chill out. And then they start bringing their drug friends, you know, and then all of a sudden it gets out of hand. And then the government starts saying, hey, this party is getting too wild because these two people are acting the fool. And so now we have to create these rules that everybody has to follow. So, but wait, we've all been behaving except for these people. And so we have to be, as a community, very, very defensive against people that are kind of like breaking these rules or being extractive, because they're basically, you know, now making us fit this new technology. I call it fitting a hexagon into a square circle. You know, like it doesn't fit, but you're forcing it to fit. And so imagine if they put these bounds on the internet, how long it would take for the internet to explode that we are now at this space. You know, so like I know it has financials, and there's always these new avenues, and people fear what they don't know. But we as a community have to be like, hey, let's refocus. Let's do what we're doing. Ethereum can be $10 and I'll still be here doing what I'm doing. Some people will leave, and that's, I am kind of hoping for more of a drop, so that people that kind of like lose steam, those visitors kind of take off and find the next thing, whether it's Forex or oil or whatever they're trying to do their flip at. And so everybody can refocus. I don't even think we're in a bear yet. I think we're more in a crab, because we've been floating around 1500, which is still higher than the all-time high on 2018. So I mean, personally wise, the writing's on the wall for a bad economy, like, everywhere, Europe and everywhere else that I can see, it doesn't look good. So I don't know how it's holding its price, but I foresee something for a bigger drop. Personally, that's not financial advice or whatever, but I'm not like, investing big time, but I am investing in myself, into learning new techniques, learning meta transactions, like where you can pay the gas for the user. So as a DApp, if I want you to try it, you don't have to pay gas. I cover it for you, and that way you get to experience, before you try before you buy. So there's new technologies out there that are going to help pave the way to help bring users into the space, the right users in a sense. And there's still going to be the extractive people. And the goal is, and the part of these spaces is to recognize those extractions and not play a part of it. I'm not really a part of a lot of these pump and dumps and everything. I kind of ignore the noise in a sense, but that's kind of the goal of the space, to teach people about the technology, that what could be and what's happening now, and be aware of the snakes in the space.
And I 100% agree with that. And I think just as an example, right, we've had a few events, right? And all events, we've encountered what I would call just bad actors, right? But and I've mentioned to the team, like, we don't focus on them. We kind of just have to put them on the side, right? Of course, we don't interact with them, or we don't. I would say not interact with them. We don't partner with them in any sense once they kind of shown their true colors, right? But we don't. How to say, we don't. I try not to spend so much time dwelling on those bad actors, right? One, because I can't change them, and yes, like if I know of a bad actor, of course, our team knows, right? And we won't really, go and kind of mention that to other people. But I think that's another way. I think other teams probably might be doing the same. If they get burned by someone, if they realize that someone's not a good actor, I can't focus on them, and I don't want to focus on them. So, but I guess my point is, they kind of, and I hope, more of a hope than anything, that they filter themselves out, right? Because again, in our network, extremely bad actors, I will let, of course, my friends know, and my team know. And I think that is happening. And I hope, again, it's happening in other groups as well.
In retrospect, I mean, to put an example, let's say you had an event in LA, Ozzy, and then I started acting the fool and I destroyed the place, right? Like, you guys just try to hold me down, but I already did the damage. And so now the place is like, nah, Ozzy, you can never come back again. It wasn't you, it was me. And so now to put that into a space, is we were talking about Do Kwon with UST. Some random dude from Korea made this and hyped it up, right? And so he totally crashed and like basically eliminated trillions of dollars in the space in a matter of a couple hours. And so now the government's like, nope, now you guys can't have any stablecoin systems or any fractional reserve type of stablecoin systems. They all have to be approved by the government. So that's why I'm like in a lot of lawyer spaces and a lot of places where I'm trying to dig with people that deal with law, because it's like, help you understand the technology, help you understand that this was like a one-time Ponzi scheme that got too big by new people in the space that got suckered into it. This is not how it always is. Some guy tried an experiment, extracted, and failed, but it's got like the biggest news, and now everybody's, any stable coin that is not government based is a scam. Well, it's not really true, but we had one bad actor that kind of ruined it for everybody in the future now. So that's why we want to like push it. You talk to, like, if you look back at all the OGs were saying this is not a good idea, this is a scam, this is a Ponzi. You look at all those people that have receipts of calling this out, but all the new people kind of buying into it, and so like the noise outweighed the people that were making sense. And so that caused a lot of damage to the space. That kind of set us back. And dealing with a stable coin or fractional reserve token is the only way we're going to be able to escape inflation in a sense. Like, we're always using, hedge Bitcoin and everything, but it's still tied to the US dollar. Until we can actually separate ourselves from that is the only way we're going to actually truly have our own kind of freedom in a sense.
How do you, can you rewind on that, as far as how does Bitcoin still depend on the US dollar?
I mean, you can look at the market itself. Like depending on the stock market, Bitcoin, drops kind of follows it mirrorly, and it's because when you look at Bitcoin, what do you look at? The value of it in U.S. dollar, right? So you're not looking at it on the pound, or you're not looking at it on the yuan. You're looking at the U.S. dollar, which is the most all stable coins, USDC, USDT. They're all based on the U.S. dollar. So I mean that the U.S. dollar used to be backed by gold, before in the 70s, and then once it became a fractional reserve type of system. So they were able to print it at will, and now we have this inflation. So now we have it pegged to something that's inflationary. It doesn't, it kind of mirrors it over time. So we, as a basically sovereign nation, would have to break away from that dollar, which would be like really, really difficult to do. But now they've cut off our legs because we can't even run a stable coin on our own with fractional types of system unless it's government approved. And I can't imagine any government approved that's not USD. So it becomes this catch-22 of, they're cutting our legs off, or the idea of the ability to break free from the very beginning because some random guy in Korea.
Yeah, I agree with that. But even if it wasn't tied to the dollar, right, for whatever reasons, the sentiment of the market and would still affect that, right? So even like the stock market is down, right? Wouldn't it be the same if the stock market didn't exist and then we went through a pandemic, right? Wouldn't that also cause Bitcoin or any other coin or any other value to decrease, just like it did with during the pandemic?
If you were in France and the U.S. stock market went down, like why would you care in a sense overall? Like if your economy is good, then why would you why would your market direct?
Because in my opinion, every economy, almost all economies, large economies, are connected, right? So you're buying things from the U.S., you're buying things from Asia, so it does affect you when Asia goes up or when Asia goes down, right? So it's all related in some form, right? The same thing with Bitcoin and Ethereum and other digital currencies. If all of a sudden, there's two presidents get killed, right? Any country or whatever, then the sentiment might be like, oh my God, there's a war, or oh, there's another virus coming, and people hold on to their money or their Bitcoin or their Ethereum or their any other coin, right? It's almost like a reaction to the market rather than the actual currency.
Yeah, but then you have to think of the currencies themselves as inflationary. Well, we have technically one static set at 21 million and a now deflationary asset. So theoretically, they should be going up versus the inflation, but they're kind of not because of it's tied to a certain amount. I mean, it gets a little bit more complicated than that, but then we're still bound to the dollar, and that's kind of the not to get too tin hat, that's how you create a sovereign nation. That's how you break control of any kind of government phone. Like if they can't control your money, then they really can't control you in a sense, because first thing anybody does, IRS freezes your funds, police take away access to anything that you have. That way you can't eat, you have no place to stay, so like having that ability to do so, that's kind of going far off the fun topic, but it has, you need a way to break away, and you need a store of value to do so. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the U.S. dollar. It could be the yuan. It could be the what is the African billionaire dollar, or whatever. It could be anything, but it's chosen to be the American dollar. So there's a bit of control in that aspect as well. I mean, if we go back to 2017, we didn't even have stable coins. We just had everything based off Bitcoin. So it was an ETH BTC pair. So when things crash, it crashed pretty heavily. So by having a stable coin, it kind of balances out for the market fluctuation. But we're evolving with the times, and we're still learning. But I felt this is kind of like a backward step overall in the technology as well.
In my opinion, and I have to think about this a little bit more, so don't roast me too much, Billy. Currency and law go hand in hand. I mean, in my opinion, like, I know it's in an ideal world you wouldn't, but I just can't see a society that doesn't have currency and law in a way hand in hand. I know I'm not saying I agree with that, right? I agree with your utopian kind of mentality that it shouldn't be that case, right? We should be all our individuals, but seeing how we humans are, right? Especially with characters. Anyways, I actually believe that there needs to be some type of law, and I've seen places where there is no law and there is not a found place, right? But at the same time, I'm not against for like extra laws, right? The our devices being constantly monitored, right? Being able for any government agency to just copy our data to turn on our cameras. Yeah, I'm not for that either. But I do think that the rule of law and the currency, it's I would say go hand in hand. Yeah, I think Tadeo would have his last.
I'll be very brief. And when you go with currency in hand and you go with cryptocurrency, even the word currency right there, uh, regarding like that about the gold standard, et cetera, the separation in the US and coming from Mexico, living in both places, seeing the inflation, seeing the things in Nicaragua and Costa Rica and Panama, spending some time in Thailand, like one thing that I can say, it's very real. It's that we all face the same problems, and we all use money as a means of instrument to trade things that we like, so, or things that we want, or things that we feel we want. Right before this, let's all remember, it was all bartering. So all the money, currency, wherever you want to see it, it's just an instrument to trade value, right? So it's all about social consensus, and that's something that we're trying to do with code, right? So that's one of the things that has created a lot of the forks, a lot of the separations, the things that you have been seeing over here. And it's perfectly normal because it's a trajectory of money. There has been thousands of currencies, and I'm not exactly sure how many are left, but it's less than 20-30% of them that are still like active right now. So we're gonna be seeing it, and I think until we really look at money as an instrument, and we focus on history and see how money was used to trade like salt for grain, and to cover our necessities, not to all the consumism. And I don't want to sound like very like on the dark side or something like that, because I also like luxuries. I also like to live a comfortable life, and all those things, right? But let's understand a little bit about that and the way that we created all this inflationary systems in the real world. And the thing about the gold also affects a lot of the countries, because before this, like a lot of the money in the world was based on whatever supply of minerals and cómo se dicen esto en español también se me olvidó. But all these commodities that you would call, right? So it's really important. Right now, it's based on promises and like the financial systems, wherever you want to see it. So let's not commit the same errors in crypto world, because I believe we have committed some of them, and we're still going to commit them. But we need to learn the history and what was the purpose of the invention of money in the first place. Sorry for being so philosophical.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. That it's good points. It's a good point. But we got to remember what Bitcoin was created for, right? Like 2008, when the crash happened, like all this black box stuff that happened behind the scenes. Like you had like all these suicides and all these people. Not one banker went to jail, right? People lost their values. People lost their houses. They got into bad deals, And so at the point where the people said enough is enough, we're gonna create our own game. We're gonna do our own currency because you guys aren't handling well. Like, whether your opinion is for or against it, like the US sending, billions of dollars to Ukraine, he didn't send it. We as the taxpayers are sending, it's like, did we have a say on that? No. It's like, who gives the ability to run this inflation and run this? It's like, no, we want to have something that we feel like we're part of the control or contribute to, in a sense. So it's kind of like you feel helpless like this when, like, say the Queen died, right? The Queen died, and then Prince, I forgot his name, took over, right? All of a sudden there's this legal clause. Hey, he doesn't have to pay the 40% income tax because there's a legal clause. It's just not fair, right? Like, well, how come you guys get to do it but we don't? And that's what it comes down to, like fairness. And so no one is above the law theoretically, but we know it's true. So the only thing that keeps everybody in balance theoretically is code. That's why they have the code is law. If it's in the code, then that's the law. You can't live and die by the sword. But the theory is, let's not forget why we started it. No one, I don't know if anybody here has ever had a PayPal business and they hold your funds for as long as they want. It's your money, but they're holding on to it because they need to clear something out, and it's months, and you got to pay bills or you got to pay employees, and they won't let you touch your own money. That's not empowering the people. That's what this is all about in the beginning.
Go ahead, Vida.
Yo, I mean, okay, I want to say really quickly, if you guys decide to make this, I don't know if you guys have this as a weekly thing, but if you guys do, I need to know. I really am fucking loving this. The amount of detail that you guys are taking every single angle on every single issue. and expanding on it, and then like flipping it on its head and then expanding on it again. Like, it's insane. But um my
Zoom
brain is
in,
so
zoom
my
out, zoom
brain
in,
is
zoom
so
out.
excited. Like, my brain is like, yes, give me more. Sorry. I don't mean to fangirl like this hard, but this is like really, really dope. And I did want to like point to I think it's Ozzy behind the Holametaverso account, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I wanted to expand on what Ozzy was saying because I clearly remember during NAFTA, when living in Mexico, we went from using 1,000 pesos to make a purchase, and that 1,000 pesos turned into 1 peso, like in, during that time of NAFTA, because now that free trade agreement and the way the laws were changing completely, completely turned the Mexican peso system on its head. Like, they needed to make a huge adjustment. All of our coins changed. There was a need for gold, so a lot of our coins were gold. All of those got, taken out of circulation, and new coins were printed with more silver. And it was just like everything changed because of the laws, because of the way, these treaties between countries had changed prior to that. So I never really understood that about the blockchain. I've read the white paper, I've read like the, manifestos and stuff. So I understood the need for transparency, and like why this system, or this new system of operating, was needed. But I didn't have that before until you guys are mentioning it now. I didn't have that parallel. So is it meant to is is there a point where the blockchain can become almost like, I don't know, where because it migrates to where the power is, right? Basically, because you said it can be put up against the yen, it can be put up against the dollar, depending on where power moves, it's going to migrate with it, right? Is that how I'm understanding?
It can happen. There's actually a forex trading system on Curve Finance where you can trade against the euro and the Japan yen and a couple other currencies. So there is a small market. It's fairly large, but small compared to the US dollar market. But it is happening, and there are pairs that are happening against other currencies. So it is in process of it. It's just, it's super small compared to the US dollar. If there is a shift, then it's the items are already in place in a sense. It does exist.
Um,
And so,
There's
do
even
CBDCs play a role in that? Is that a component of these CBDCs, and like the things that MTech is doing with like the African countries, and all the success that they're having with the CBDCs?
Um, again, I'm a little bit more decentralized, so I'm kind of anti CBDC. I see the value in it when something's backed by the government. And again, the U.S. government doesn't have a lot of slouches. They have a really top-notch team that's talented. There's also a lot of people that are not should not be behind the wheel as well. And so, do you trust the country that will run a smart contract on a currency that will be attacked by every other nation every second on the second, with the same country that ran the Pentagon security with the admin password as a default? They're super intelligent in one aspect and drop the ball in other aspects. It depends who controls that wheel. And with government contracts, sometimes it's who gets the best bid in a sense. So I hold my reservations on it.
go ahead, Tadit.
I think here, Vida, like we really need to understand, if we would live like in Disneyland for the blockchain, we would be able to use our Ethereum to buy a coffee at Starbucks, to buy our flight to Cancun, to buy our drinks at the bar with this or that, or we would be able to use it as an instrument of exchange, right? But right now, even though in 2017, I think there was companies like Overstock, I'm not sure if it was Walmart or a few other retailers that were starting to adopt it, the fade ran away because of the volatility. And that's when all the fucking demand came for for not the CBDCs, the stable coins, and you even have peso stable coins, right? So that would be like in a perfect Disneyland. Right now, it hasn't taken the adoption. A lot of the businesses lost money because they thought it was always going to go up, and then all of a sudden, all their sales dropped down because of the market. So I believe, in my opinion, that really affected it, right? And once you look into this, and once you start to look into the centralization part of it, the things that happen with the merge, if you're in favor, not in favor, the forks, and everything like this, Vida, I think it's also tied to the regulation and CBDCs. I don't want to bring el vaso de agua fría aquí, el balde de agua fría para echárselos en la espalda, but the reality is that the CBDs are coming. Like it or not, there's a few active, and if you guys look into BIS, which is Bank of International Settlements, leadered by Agustin Carstens, who is a Mexican guy, and he used to run the Bank of Mexico, whatever you call it. They're implementing CBDCs. They're basically telling you, don't do. It's like the fucking ICOs when they told you we have the Ethereum killer. It's called Ethereum 2.5. It's the same thing, but it's a little bit better. That's the pitch that they gave you. That's the same pitch that they told people. They told them how wonderful CBDCs would be and how bad crypto technology was, but that they were back behind them, so that would be a little bit different, right? So CBDCs are coming. It's a way to see your personal government, like wherever you're a resident and where you're living and whatever affects you, so that you can see how it's going to affect you and if there's going to be like interoperability between their CBDCs, if it's going to be private blockchains. But if you look into all the news, the business report, which I'm talking about, it's 100 and something pages. That's a recommendation for all the countries to basically use the blockchain technology, but not in a way that we're using it right now. But basically to replace the dollar, the yen, the peso, whatever you want. But that, like Billy said, there's a lot of control and they're going to have a lot of access of information. What happens if you don't pay your taxes, if you broke the law, if you don't pay your ticket, are they going to be able to block your account or have better access than the banks? That's the issues right there.
And I would say yes to all those, Tadit, because I think China, from my understanding, is leading that, right? Where you can go into a supermarket and you just have face detection, and then that goes into your bank account, reduces that. Or if you have a legal matter, they can actually shut down some, your identity, where you wouldn't be able to access things or definitely not use money. But I think, I wanted to just repeat that currency is one thing, which I think is the blockchain, that it allows us to do that part. But the law part, I think we don't have any, not any say in the blockchain, right? The law part, that's why I mentioned earlier that the currency and the law go hand in hand, right? So all the possibilities as a blockchain has, technically, yes, all these things are technically possible. But the other half of that is the regulations, right? The governments, the law, which I think are not in par yet.
I'm going to go ahead and say that CBDCs will be incentivized. If grandma wants to invest in the cryptocurrency and Bank of America is now offering 6% on the same stable, they're going to get liquidity that way. But again, you kind of give up your powers of the power of cash to be able to, buy whatever you want, like on Craigslist or something, without people having to know. And the classic is, if you don't have anything to hide, then then what are you worried about? But you always want to have a sense of privacy, in which places like China don't let you have. And it's kind of like you give an inch, they take a foot, in a sense, when you're willing to give up certain rights. So a great example would be, let's say you have male impotency, right? And all of a sudden you have to buy these dick pills to keep your shit up, right? That should be a private concern. It's not illegal, it's not bad, but like, it's socially embarrassing, right? So now that's on the chain forever. So now this person's running for president and shit, and all of a sudden they're going to dig it back up 20 years later. Hey, you bought these dick pills at Rite Aid, and then it's like, yeah, it's true, it's not illegal, but now it's used as slander against you. And looking at Canada and looking at different places that people that donated to causes and now went flash back at them, you want to have that form of privacy. Again, are you willing to give up your power? So then me, as I don't want to say community leader, but someone that says, hey, when that comes out, I'm not going to invest in it, and it theoretically should be denied. And if the people say it's denied, it's not that the government controls you, it's a public service. They should be listening to the people, right? So, they might present it as, oh, you have to do this, but, there's different ways. And the laws, again, the laws move very slow. And it's, in a sense, I kind of feel like it works against you, And I'll give a good example. I developed a smart contract like for musicians, right? To, you know, you as a user can invest into the musician. Let's say you have this hot artist, right? And they just don't have a deal. So they create this NFT project, and you buy and you mint one, and each mint guarantees you a percentage of whatever royalties come in or anything on this artist. So now you're betting on this artist, you're investing in this artist, and by holding this NFT, you get a return on it. And let's say, this NFT is giving you, 10% royalties every year. And let's say you don't want it anymore, you could sell it. So your investment, you can move that investment around. But now that's a security. Well, I mean, that's shitty. Like how can the community support their artist and invest in them if they're not an accredited investor? I think like accredited investor is like the most bullshit thing to keep, poor and rich richer, right? If you have a lot of money, you can get these good deals. And if you don't have a lot of money, too bad, you have to pay retail. That's kind of the most shittiest thing. So it's like, well, where are the lawyers defending us? Where are the politicians trying to, like a political, like volley these things, like this is where I'm trying to come from. It's like, where are they? I would support them 100% if they're going on this rampage. We only have Andrew Wang as the only one that's pro Bitcoin, but he's still not trying to change these rules. He's just trying to say, oh, cryptocurrency is good. But these are the things that I'm trying to bring attention to. Is like, there's so many things. Like, if you can think of it software wise, it can be developed. The only thing that cuffs my hands, especially as a US citizen, is the goddamn laws and how slow the SEC is to do anything, and they don't make any decisions, and there's no clarity. And I don't want that smoke. So now my creativity is very limited. And so that's why you have so many people in Europe and like certain regions of Latin America that are able to be very innovative, because we as Americans can't. Unfortunately, that's just because of the rules and the law. And that's that.
I do think that most of what you mentioned, or at least the part about investors, right, or just people coming into the space, and the laws, and I think it is a world where it's not balanced, it's not fair, right? But I think this is only the first half of going towards that direction, right? And I actually think it's like a long way to go, right? I mean, I compared it a lot to the digitization of things, right? We digitized first music. We digitized, of course, the taxis, right? Uber. And this is the biggest entity that we digitize, which is the financial aspect of things, right? How do you digitize fiat? How do you digitize paper and rocks, right? We're literally keeping track of our money, at least fiat wise, with paper. So definitely will be digitized as well, right? Which we're talking about. And I think the opportunities you're mentioning, we are, I guess, getting a glimpse or a preview of them, or we can see the possibilities, right, with the technology. But I think we're a few years away from that from the law allowing that technology. And the law, I mean, those who have the advantage in the law, right, which you mentioned just a few people right now. It will take some time for us to digitize and move in that direction. I'm not sure what that time frame will be, but I think it's going to take. It's a matter of changing laws and changing politician views and political systems in order for us to go in that direction.
Yeah, 100% agree. It takes time, just education, man, and that's the kind of the goal. So that's why I'm so like, don't come in and get NFTs, because then you get a bunch of people who say, oh, NFTs is a scam because they got rugged on their first project. And that's when it comes down to education and being, I would say, a little bit careful in the space. And my slogan, trust nobody until you verify, right? So it's like that should be the education. If anything takes away from the space today, it's like verify before you jump in, and that way you don't have a bad taste of crypto. Like anybody that got onboarded last year is probably mad at the person that onboarded him at the beginning of the year, right? Because they just lost money. I don't know anybody that's made money. So it's timing, it's time in the market, understanding, but not losing the focus is kind of like my point.
Go ahead, Ted.
I'm going to go back with that, the accredited investors, and exactly what's happening right now with the POS, right? Proof of staking allows more ESG, like it complies with the ESG regulations, and ESG, it's what allows institutional investment, right? So this is one of the things that it's going to happen. We're already starting to see it in some countries, like in Canada. It's not like, oh, we're going to go against it. It's already a giant, so let's try to make it ours, right? That kind of mentality. And this is not financial advice. This is not legal advice. Make your own research. Don't trust this pobre tonto. But the thing over here that we really need to consider it's that, right? They're trying to, the rules that are playing in Canada, like limited $30,000 purchase for altcoins, it's not going to apply to the accredited investors. And the same thing is going to happen in the US and in a lot of countries, right? So what's going to happen is that, like what Billy was saying, right now it's going to be more difficult for a person, un cabrón como yo, un regular, to raise a project, right? Because you're not going to be allowed, like if there's more regulation, the way that they're acting right now. And like Billy was saying, it's usually really slow. But right now that they're seeing like all this communities, all the way that the market even has sustained and the communities are building, like companies and governments are noting it. So they're starting to put a lot of this controls, right? Like the one in Canada, the one that we were trying to see for NFTs in Korea, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's very, very important to notice that this that the POS also allows a lot more institutional investment, which is, if the regulations are keeping going on like the way that they're going, that's my personal perspective, they're going to limit a lot of the small and medium creators. So it's going to be a replica of the old system. And if we don't take care of the community, it's going to become like a Web2 on steroids, where the richer are going to become richer. And that goes back to like the people, the followers, what Billy was saying right now. It's so true. There's a company, it comes and it's going to look for me. I received so many fucking DMs from companies, and I asked them a question like, okay, so what's your project? What's your intention with the Web3? Oh, you can read it on the website. Thank you. If you're interested, call me and we can give you a good paycheck. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm not in for this kind of stuff, right? And it's really sad. Like me as like right now, I get a lot of those things, and they are gonna try to do it. Some are gonna be really authentic, and I really liked like the way that Jarritos did it with Sandy, and we all know Sandy. And it was in a job post by Laura. Like we know the people, and like what Billy was saying, we cannot trust. Like what Billy was saying, don't even trust me. Don't trust Billy, Vida, Holametaverso, nobody. Like we gotta verify. But in the end, it's the consensus that the community is gonna give. But we need to find ways and figure algorithms and protocols to also help all those new people that are coming with a lot of value to the ecosystem, to give them a voice, because it's not the same to open a space right now. Like it was September last year when there was a few people and stuff like that. There was a big hype and stuff like that. And right now people like, oh shit, like they get scared. Like some people that are new, like, oh shit, I don't want to hop on over there. Like it's already a space at stake and like I don't have anything to learn. So let's just be a little bit more conscious about that. And sorry for extending right there. But let's look at this.
No worries. I just want to go out on the limb and say I don't get any DMs tatted, so you know, I don't know what it's like.
You're lucky, bro. You're lucky.
Yeah,
You're
they're pretty.
lucky.
They're like, hey, can you do an NFT contract for $300? Is more my DMs. You know? But anyways, yeah, I mean, like the biggest question I get in the space is like, how can you contribute? You know, I'm just this, I'm just that. You know, and it's like kind of like spaces like these, education with the wrong thing. Like I hear so many bad takes on different places, and not opinionated, but like, you know, I don't know how many times I've heard, oh, the merge is going to improve gas prices. It's like the worst version of telephone I've ever heard in my life. You know, like all this bad information just being spread everywhere. Where I'm seeing TikToks of people, you know, saying it. I'm like, come on, guys, you know, like get it together, like correct the information. You know, nobody wants to sound stupid, but sometimes you just got to correct people. Maybe that's why I get a bad taste, like from people, like because I'm like, no, that's not true. In the middle, they're explaining it. I'd rather shut it down at that moment than have it spread like wildfire. And when you get all this bad information spreading, you go for, you know, write an article. You know, again, I don't necessarily onboard people in a sense. I help people that ask me. You know, so it's not like, hey, come check this out. I made this, this, and this. I made that mistake in 2017, you know, like with some family members, and, you know, everything was high. And then I got those text messages when things started crashing in 2018, and I felt so bad. Like I didn't even feel bad about me losing money. I felt bad about them losing money because they trusted me. And that's not a good feeling of like, you know, someone loses it. And now they're super happy because like they took off and like they're super high. And now, you know, they're the genius. I was the idiot in 2018 and now they're the genius in 2021, you know, but it was, now my approach is, you know, I'm doing what I'm doing. And if you want to do monkey see, monkey do, come on, jump board with me, but not like, hey, sign up. This is a good opportunity. Because if it fails, it's your fault. If it succeeds, they're a genius, you know? So like, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. So if you can create models of like, you know, maybe what you're doing in public, you know, maybe you're an artist that creates art and then sells a few bucks. Maybe you only make $10 a month, but be real with it. Give people expectations. Not everybody makes $1 million overnight. But if you're real with it and just tell your story, I think that's one of the best things that you can do to contribute to the space, for the honesty in the space and the realistics of the space. They're not all $1 million trades overnight. Sometimes they're a grind for a couple of years till you make it. And I think that is probably one of the best things you can do in the space. And I think part of that, I think, is Holametaverso, why I vibe with it, because it's different stories from different people, from different types of technologies or art perspectives, and their input towards the space. So again, another thing you can take away from the space is like everybody here plays a part. It's just everybody plays a different part, and just tell your story. That's the best thing I can say.
Yep, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's however the tide moves, right? I think for me, most of the value is here in this community, right? So we've seen all this mess kind of going around, right, from all directions, NFTs, the Celsius, all that stuff. Of course, Bitcoin and every currency being down. But to me, that's maybe a third, of the reasons why I'm here, right? It's no matter what, right? We've been through pretty low times as far as the currencies, the digital currencies, but we're still here chatting about it, right? It's still exciting. So it's been 2 hours. I know people have to eat and probably head out, but I really wanted to thank everyone for joining the space. Actually, it was very intriguing. I liked it, and I learned a whole lot. And I just leave with this thought. I don't know if Billy or Ted have or me that have any last thoughts, but I actually believe that Bitcoin and Satoshi and it's like the government or governments have a big hand in it. The internet was invented by DARPA, which is part of the government program, and I don't think it was just that they invented it and they kind of said, "Oh, here you go, you build it." I think in some way or another, the government and different entities still are part of the architects of all this. So just saying that, I think it's it's just a new technology that we're allowed to use, right? In a weird sense. So, but there are also a huge amount of opportunities. The internet brought us a lot of opportunities. There's it's still bringing us a lot of opportunities. So I think I still believe in this technology, and I still believe that we can use technology to help ourselves and to help others, right? Regardless of all the different hurdles we have, we can actually make a positive change within ourselves and for our community too. So I'll end it with that. Ted, Billy, or Rita, do you have any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I was serious earlier. I don't know if you guys do this regularly, the three of you together. But if you do, I'm happy to, please let me know, because I'm happy to like sit in and listen. This is an amazing conversation, and there's not enough of this, where there's like a lot of the technical stuff is being talked about in a way that's understandable and is like easier to process. But I 1,000% agree with what you're saying. I have not been in this space very long, but I have yet to like be without something where I can help somewhere. I'm constantly, you know, being available in some way, shape, or form. And I've been lucky enough to do that with multiple projects and a couple different communities and different blockchains and um all over the world, you know what I mean? Like doing different things from IRL travel and real estate to like, women and cannabis and moms and Latino America, Spanish speaking moms, or, IRL events and like San Miguel de Allende with like on the Hedera network. Like, you know what I mean? Like just so much stuff that I've just been so fucking lucky to be able to see and to bear witness and to help support in whatever way I've been able to support them. Um,
It'd be great to have you one of our events, Vita. I think what you're describing, tatted, of course Billy has been there too, but what you just described really in the events, it's just for me at least, it brings it to a whole nother level. Once you start meeting some of these members of this community, so hopefully you can make our next one.
I really want to, because it's like I want people to see that you can literally come off the street and come here and just say like, look, and Tatted hasta se cansó of hearing me say that when it was like 2 weeks, because I met him like at week 1 or 2, and I was like, and then every time I would talk, I'd be like, I've only been here for 2 weeks. for 3 weeks. I've only been here for 4 weeks. I don't know if what I'm saying is right because I felt so dumb, like saying my like point of view on stuff. So I wanted to preface it before that by saying, look, if I sound really stupid with what I'm about to say, it's only because I've only been here for like 4 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever it was. And like it's been crazy because that hasn't happened once. It's always been welcomed. The need for diversity is like so like it's not even like we need diversity and we're just gonna sit here and bitch and whine about it. We're gonna like welcome you regardless of how off the wall or I mean, because I don't know, I feel like I've said some off the wall shit. I think it was like week 2 when I was like, listen, I know I've only been here for 2 weeks, but why the fuck are we still on JPEGs? Like, and Tatted would just laugh at me and still welcome me back into his spaces. Um, I know I didn't rub everybody the right way, but I was genuinely curious. Like, why the fuck are we still like trading JPEGs to each other and calling it art, and acting like we're all fucking art, experts. But stupid shit, it didn't matter. Like it's welcomed here and it's supported and it's needed. Like I just love it. I really like this community and I love that the way you guys represent it. And when Luis showed me the Holametaverso event, I was like fucking floored because beautiful people. I was shook. First of all, el de los ojitos verdes, they're co-hosting or hosting the event, and then like how everybody looks is like just oh man, like these are real people. Like you guys are like fucking doing the real shit. Like you're like amazing ass people. Like I feel like there should be more eyes on that YouTube video. I know I remember telling the Latinoverse team, I was like when I met with them, I was like, yo, like you guys need to be pushing this more. It's a great event. Like it was beautiful. It was like amazing to see what everybody had to say and how everybody interacted IRL. Like, yo, we're really fucking doing this. Like I'm so glad to be part of this community and I love it so fucking much. Like there's dope shit happening here. So I went me fui bien largo, but yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Vida. I really appreciate that feedback. And it's crazy because you can describe that just from the video, right? And you can imagine how it was in real life. So yeah, and then we went to Bogota, which is a whole nother experience, and just this meetup in Mexico City too. Like, I'm even more attracted to the community. So thank you. And we do plan to have this on a weekly basis. We just haven't narrowed down the time. And during our events, we usually kind of don't have as many spaces, but right now we're almost close to announcing our next event. So in the next week or so, we're going to have, of course, spaces, and we'll have this space again with Billy, and hopefully Tata can join us as well. Hopefully next week. We just don't know the time. Some of them might be around lunchtime. Some of them might be evening, but suggestions are welcome.
Yeah, I'm just gonna close my ending statements like this. I think Holametaverso has them randomly. I know Tatted has his kind of like daily or at least weekly. I have a show at night bi-weekly because it's just too much time for me to commit on there. I just talk about news and events and just talk shit for about an hour. But overall, like this space moves pretty quick. So don't do the same thing over and over again. Like no one's out here selling spinners anymore. The same thing with the space. It's like there's always something new, there's always something developing. So like if you're trying to reproduce something that was successful 6 months ago, it's not going to work. So like be in the cutting edge. This technology is the cutting edge. If you want to be a developer, I 100% support you and say do it. It is hard, it's not easy, but they're always in demand, and it's just something that I don't see going away anytime soon. So if you have aspirations or any ideas, just hit me up and I can tell you exactly how I did it. And I was self-taught. It's not like someone was there holding my hand. It was, I was saying fuck you to the screen like how many times, I don't know. But eventually it worked out. So, just be innovative in the space. And if you stay in the space and you contribute to the space, and you'll be like, I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm gonna say you'd probably be like the success stories from 4 years ago, and if you continue on here and you're pretty straight up and honest, you'll see who is legit and who's not, and you know, you'll make your way in this space. But yeah, if you're trying to be a smart contract developer, they're always in demand. Like if you're looking to change your career, it is in demand. There's nonstop work left and right. So definitely, you know, if it's even in your mind, just check it out and give it a shot. Anyways, have a good one.
Well, it was a pleasure, Ozzy. Billy, un honor. De verdad, vi the words and everything. The conversation flowed. It was like 2 hours. I thought it was like 10 minutes. But it was a very interesting conversation. I really like the perspectives. Billy, it's always an honor to talk to you. It's always to take a good hit of water in reality, right? I don't believe that anybody's going to make it. I see the same patterns that I've seen in real life. Like I've been building businesses and communities in many countries, and I've seen booms. Like I've seen phishing booms, and I see how the people react and the behavior that I see here with a lot of technology. Remember that I'm talking to you in towns that some of them do not have even señal de celular. They don't have a phone's coverage. So there's no data. There's cell phones, but there's no data. And I've seen the same behavior here with all this blockchain technology, right? So we can have the best fucking technology in the world. We can, I don't know, have a machine that does everything for us, but if we don't use it right, we're still gonna fuck up, right? And it's a moment that we take accountability and don't blame our neighbors, our friends, but blame ourselves for our same mistake. Like it's perfectly common to commit them as a person. Some businesses are gonna make them. It's also the level they make them, but it's perfectly normal to learn, right? And right now, I think we're in a historic moment. The merge just happened. There's going to be a lot of changes. Like Billy said, this space changes a lot. There's no way to find what's going to be the next trend, what's going to be the best way to market next. And what Billy said about marketing or using something like that to launch what worked 6 months ago, it's not going to work. Just be yourselves, and the traction is going to take off, and you're going to find your niche. You don't need to have a million followers, but you need to create like those alliances that are going to help you get to the next level. And I think that's one of the things that has helped me. And I think it's helped a lot of people over here. So just be yourself and be real. Like if your expectations were here to get 100x and become a millionaire next year, you might get there if you act fast and you work hard, but most likely you're not, right? Especially like if you're minting, waiting for 100x's, then it's going to be less probable, but you're going to be able to make a living. There's a lot of opportunities. And like Billijitsu, I know that there's not all the people that want to be devs, and also like on communication, community management, community building, there's a lot of opportunities. Justamente como se llama este plataforma foundation. A few weeks ago, had a position $175,000 per year, remote position available for anybody in any country in the world. I don't know if they had any limitations, but it was 175K plus expenses, and they had like a bonus based on things that they did, right? So it was really interesting, and I think that the possibilities are there. But we're not gonna get feeded the thing. Like we're not gonna get knocked on our door and hey, here you go ahead, have $1 million, or here's your dream job. Like even if you know me, if you know Bida, if you know Billy, if you know Ola, if you know the founder of I don't know a Facebook, Mark, I think somebody knows who he is. I don't know who he is. Somebody told me about him. Or even if you have the best relationships in the world, if you don't use them and use them in a way that que no, mira, dame esto, like exigiendo, no, but creating a real connection and being real with that person, then they're not gonna have like, o sea, no tienes por qué exigir nada, no, pero tampoco haciéndolo así, sino haciendo las cosas de corazón. But I believe that there's a lot of opportunity. I'm really pumped after this space. Like I know that people are listening to the bad side of the stories, and that's perfectly good. That's perfectly fine. Como dijo Ola, hay que verlos, hay que estar conscientes. You know the risk they represent to you, and y si no representan una amenaza, pues estate tranquilo y no les prestes atención. In real business, sometimes people get really dirty. So also here there was threats de muerte, ya existieron. So also be careful, and everybody do your own research. So as long as the things that people are doing que no te afecten, pues just let them be. Así es una de las cosas que doy de consejo. Y thank you, así un abrazo, Billy, vida, un abrazo.
Thank you, Ted. Thank you for that. Billy?
Yeah, just really quick, for those that are interested in Latin music, and I definitely have to get you guys connected right here. Miguel has a show called Sea of Hertz. He's actually in Mexico that has a whole bunch of bands, and they play music and new music development and teach a little bit about the blockchain space. I think that's happening in a couple hours. I'm going to try to retweet them. but it's a show that I've been working with from time to time. That's just, you know, like they're learning how to be on chain and learning how to put music on chain. So it's definitely something to check out if you're into, like, you know, the latest Latin music in there. So I will definitely retweet that at some point. So keep an eye out. That's happening today, I think in an hour or two, but I'm not 100% sure. That's all.
Sounds cool. We'll look for that.